Hello, it is 6 a.m. in Washington. It's 1 p.m. in Athens. I'm Monita Rajpal. You're watching CNN, the world's news leader. This is World One, live from London. The French president and German chancellor will hold an urgent phone conference with the Greek prime minister this evening in an attempt to defuse the Eurozone's escalating debt crisis. The French and German leaders are likely to urge Greece to stick to its debt reduction plan. The country is failing to meet the goals set out in its bailout agreement. Detaind joins us now here in our studio to talk a little bit about the Greece problem. We've seen it happen before. What are their options at this point?
Well, they don't have many, and let me read you this quote that's quite pertinent today from the famous Victorian British businessman Walter Bagehot. He said that if you have to prove that you're creditworthy, well, it seems as though your credit has already long gone, and that's very pertinent to the situation that Greece...
This phone conversation over the European leaders. Thank you so much for that, Nina. Appreciate that. But we want to see what newspapers around the world are saying about this. Let's walk over to here, the boards here, and the Wall Street Journal has the headline, Merkel eases fears over Greece. And goes on to say the political sparring in Berlin reflects the difficulty Europe faces in reaching a consensus on just how to manage the region's deepening debt crisis, both domestically and within the framework of the European Union. Now, here in the United Kingdom, The Guardian has a guest editorial with the headline, Spooked into Austerity, We Dig Our Own Economic Grave. It goes on to say 3 years after the collapse of Lehman Brothers, the global economy is not going through a recovery from financial crisis, but simply entering Act 2 after a brief intermission. And finally, the Oman Daily Observer with the headline, New Battle for the Euro. The opinion piece says, until recently, even thinking about the consequences of a breakup of the euro was, well, unthinkable. No longer. If the outcome of the mounting crisis is unpredictable, so are the consequences. One issue, many views, and you can read all those articles in full at facebook.com/W1CNN. They struck at the heart of U.S. power in Afghanistan, but after holding out for almost 24 hours, the Taliban's siege of the U.S. Embassy and NATO command is over. Here, a plume of smoke rises from the building they used to stage the assault on key targets in central Kabul. CNN's Suzanne Malveaux reports now on the assaults from Kabul.
A bold and brazen attack against the U.S. Embassy and a NATO compound in one of the most secure areas in the center of Kabul.
An Iranian judge is still considering whether to set bail for 2 Americans accused of spying. It seems to go against Iran's President Ahmadinejad, who has said Josh Fatal and Shane Bauer could be free within days. A lawyer for the pair says Iran has already named the price of their freedom, and that's where Brian Todd picks up the story of mixed messages.
It took more than 2 years, and it'll cost $500,000 each in what the Iranian government calls bail money.
Well, the U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton says she is encouraged by the messages coming out of Iran, but she remains cautious. Iran has made similar claims in the past, and there was some expectation the 2 Americans could be released at the end of Ramadan.
We have followed this very closely, and we are encouraged by what the Iranian government...
Fatal and Bauer have an appeal of their sentence still pending. You're watching World One, live from London. Coming up, rising floodwaters wash over parts of Pakistan, claimed the lives of more than 200 people across southeastern Pakistan. The UN and other countries are now offering help, but the human cost of the floods is rising every day. Some 5.3 million people have been affected and almost 1.2 million homes hit by the torrential rains in the past month. An estimated 80% of crops in the region have been damaged, but it could take years to figure out the cost to Pakistan's economy. The country has barely recovered from last year's flooding, which were the worst in its history. We'll see CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh is near Karachi. He joins us now on the phone with more on the efforts to help those that are so desperately affected. Nick.
Monita, what we've seen since we left Karachi this morning is stretches of the countryside on the way to these more affected rural areas underwater. I think
they're from Karachi. The question now is, are things likely to get worse before they get better? We want to get the forecast from CNN's meteorologist Mari Ramos at the World Weather Center. And Mari, we heard there, Nick, saying that the winds that were forecast to arrive overnight luckily didn't. But again, the forecast still remains pretty dire.
Yeah, there were many areas that had some very heavy rain in the overnight hours, precisely, even across parts of Sindh. Even Karachi had some very heavy rain.
Mari, thank you for that. Appreciate it. You are watching World One live from London. You are watching World One. Here are some of the stories that we're talking about. NASA now says one of its defunct satellites will crash back to Earth during the last week of September. The 6.5-ton climate probe has been losing altitude since it was decommissioned back in 2005. The U.S. Space Agency says most of the craft will burn up during re-entry, although some larger pieces are expected to survive. Officials don't yet know where it'll hit, but say it is most likely to end up in the sea. One man's hunt for food was foiled by a combination of narrow window bars and a wide waistline. CCTV pictures from the early hours of Saturday morning show 19-year-old Hakam Gomez getting stuck in a window of the Mr. Beef drive-thru in the U.S. state of Illinois. Now, he finally squeezed through after shedding his clothes. Yeah, he took off his clothes, having been trapped for around 20 minutes. Unfortunately for him, he then tripped the alarm and was arrested. Police say he has no criminal record and didn't appear to try and steal any money. He's due in court on charge of felony burglary next week. Hopefully he'll be dressed for that. And Lindsay Lohan has leapt to the defense of her younger sister, Aliana. Last week, pictures of the 17-year-old appeared on the web, leading to speculation she had undergone plastic surgery. But on her Twitter account, Lindsay spoke of her pride for her sister, describing her as gorgeous. Ali's representative put her client's slimmer looks down to a growth spurt. We've got amazing pictures to show you now. It's just an amazing story, too. A 21-year-old motorcyclist is alive today because of the kindness of strangers. These pictures show the incredible rescue in the U.S. state of Utah. A car and a motorcycle both on fire. The young man trapped underneath and about a dozen bystanders who worked together to save him. A renewed sense of crisis has gripped Europe in the past few weeks. There's a huge amount of discontent over austerity in Greece, and it doesn't appear to be easing. Taxi drivers went on strike this week against government reforms, which will open up their industry to more competition. And there's growing concern that even a second bailout may not be enough to save Greece from default. Alinda Lapropoulou joins us now live via Skype from Athens. And Alinda, it seems as though, there's just no easy answer to this problem in Greece. Even the Greek politicians or even other politicians around the world don't have an answer for it. But it's understandable how the locals are angry, but no one has a solution.
Well, that's very true, and this is the reason why people take to the streets. They're asking their politicians to provide some kind of solution for them.
All right, Alinda, we thank you very much for that. Alinda Lapropoulou reporting to us there via Skype in Athens. Thank you. Now, the siege, we want to take you back to another story that we were following here on World One, the siege in central Kabul, which is over now, almost 24 hours after it began. 6 militants were killed after the attackers launched an assault on the U.S. Embassy, NATO headquarters, as well as the Afghan intelligence offices in Kabul on Tuesday. Many people are now asking just how militants managed to penetrate one of Kabul's most heavily fortified areas. CNN's Suzanne Malveaux has been inside the building where the Taliban gunmen were holed up. She joins us now on the phone from the scene in Kabul. Suzanne, what are you seeing? Now, she's said to be one of Colonel Gaddafi's closest allies, and she's known across Libya for her alleged cruelty and fearlessness. She's Huda Ben Amir, otherwise known as the Executioner. But the collapse of the Gaddafi regime has also led to her downfall. Libya's new leaders say she has been arrested and is now awaiting trial. CNN's Rima Maktabi looks back at the moment that made her so infamous. Now, a word of caution, some of what you hear may be upsetting, and the quality of some of the older footage has degraded.
This old video shows probably the most feared woman in Gaddafi's Libya, Huda bin Amir.
Kenyan police have detained a suspect in connection with the murder of a British tourist and the abduction of his wife. The couple were attacked on Sunday at an expensive safari lodge on the coast near the border with Somalia. The man was shot dead during the attack. His wife was kidnapped. It was reported on Tuesday that bandits may have taken her to Somalia by boat. ITN correspondent Rohit Kachari joins us now live from Kiwayu Island in Kenya. Rohit, thank you for being with us. What's the latest in terms of the investigation and this arrest?
Well, Monita, it is now almost 4 days since Mr. and Mrs. Tebbet landed at the exclusive resort a few hundred yards from where we're standing.
The Rugby World Cup continued with 3 more group matches on Wednesday, and there was one surprise result as a North American team claimed, Alex, a major scalp. Alex Thomas, what's more on that?
We may be hyping up slightly more than it is, but let me explain a bit more. Officially, the Rugby World Cup hosts are New Zealand. But if you ask any of the Pacific Island teams, they consider it their home tournament too. So been eager, he'd have had another gold in the bag.
Pretty good runner.
Yeah.
Go Canada. Let's just go back to that. Go Canada. I was just tweeting, I was saying that, I don't really follow rugby, but go Canada. I've been told by a lot of Twitter followers that I should follow rugby.
Yeah, and this North Americans, they are loving it right now.
Yes, so we all. All right, Alex, thank you very much for that. We're going to stick with the men theme. We'll take you to New York Fashion Week, where men are stealing the spotlight. Back, you are watching World One live from London. We are approaching almost 7 a.m. in New York and 1 p.m. in Berlin. It's that time of year again. New York Fashion Week is in full swing as designers preview their spring 2012 collections. Donna Karen, that could show you there. Donna Karen found some inspiration for her latest line from her travels to Haiti. She says the earthquake-stricken nation spoke to her heart. She's a very spiritual person, and of course it reflects in her designs. For designer Betsy Johnson, always, age is no barrier. She's been wowing the fashion industry since the 1960s, and her latest collection is inspired by a hip-hop star, Nicki Minaj. And here we go. J. Crew also had a shot to impress on the runway, as they did, according to fashion critics. The retailer got a popularity boost from U.S. First Lady Michelle Obama, who wore some of their clothes on the cover of Vogue not too long ago. And she's a fan of their clothes. Designer Marc Jacobs, his line was described as clean and bold when he previewed his latest on Monday. That collection featured a sporty look, bright colors, and even bathing suits. Well, when you think of catwalks, models, and designer clothes, you probably think of women, as we've shown you, all women here. But today, more men are discovering a passion for fashion. That's turning the menswear industry into a more lucrative business. From New York Fashion Week, CNN's Alina Cho reports.
The catwalk. This may be what comes to mind, but this is what's suddenly hot.
And I'm Monita Rajpal in London. Thank you for joining us. We'll have an update of the news headlines at the top of the hour. You're watching CNN.